I'm a first-time voter, so I'm really excited about that.
Every vote matters, like no matter what.
Each person's vote does make a difference.
Everything technically counts.
Don't vote can't be part of the process, right?
It's our responsibility, like as U.S. citizens, to vote.
It's about the contestation of ideas so that we lead to more durable solutions.
I have no idea what I'm in for as far as like going into that building.
Easing fear and clearing out confusion for first-time voters, what you need to know before heading to the polls.
Confused about the Electoral College? I break down just exactly how the system works, coming up next.
This is another battle that has to be fought.
As we elect tomorrow's leaders, it wasn't that long ago that not everyone had the right to vote. We sit down with history makers across East Tennessee to talk about the fight to get here.
Thanks for joining us for our Vol News Election Day special, Voting Matters. Covering the topics that matter to you, we are coming up to you live from Williams Terrace at the College of Communications and Information. I'm Grayson Thatcher.
And I'm Colin Berry. From how Tennessee played a role in women's suffrage to what to expect at the polls today, we break down why your vote matters. We also have a live interview with Knoxville Mayor Indian Kincannon with advice for first-time voters.
That's right. If you're planning on voting today, or maybe you're in line right now, there's a few things you need to know.
First, in Knox County, the polls open at 8 a.m., so as long as you're in line by 8 p.m., you're good to go. Second, you need to bring a valid state or federal ID. That can be your driver's license or your passport. Lastly, you will need to know where your polling location is. You have to vote in the county where you're registered, and you can check the Go Vote Tennessee app to see what the location is for you.
Early voting numbers are in, and we've been following this story since day one of early voting, where record-breaking numbers were seen in Georgia, South Carolina, and other states.
The last time Tennessee broke an early voting record was in 2020, when 2.28 million people showed up to the polls before Election Day.
Our Vol News reporters have been on location getting videos like this of people waiting in line to cast their vote, but we didn't break any records this year. Across Tennessee, over 2 million people have already casted their ballot, and here in Knoxville, that number is at a little over 150,000.
It was very easy. If you're worried about it, just go do it. It took like 10 minutes.
Voting can be quick, but even if there is a line, making your voice heard is one of the easiest ways to participate in democracy.
As you head to the polls, you might start to wonder, does my vote count? Well, you're not alone.
I sat down with first-time voters and election experts to get down to the heart of that question.
Okay.
As Matthew Hyde heads to cast his vote, he knows his vote is one out of the millions.
I think it does it at a lower level. Nationally, though, it's like a grain of sand, but everything technically counts.
Jenna Cobb is another voter who has her doubts about whether her voice will be heard as she cast her ballot.
In Tennessee, your vote doesn't count quite as much if you vote against what color the state normally is.
Election expert Katie Cahill says it's not about whether or not your political party will win the election.
It's about dressing for the game and making the other team fight you for victory. Okay? And so that is all what democracy is about. It's about the contestation of ideas so that we lead to more durable solutions.
Among many, Ryan Fan is one student who believes in the power each vote can hold in democracy.
Yes, every vote matters, like no matter what, because every election is important in our country.
Win or lose, your vote counts, but it all starts with casting a ballot.
Not a voter until you vote. So you're not a voter because you're registered or because you care about politics. You're a voter when you cast a ballot. And that is how you lend your voice to the democratic process.
Each vote is a voice lending a hand to American democracy.
Your vote literally counts in a democracy. I mean, that's the foundation of democracy, is that every person who is eligible to vote, when they cast a ballot, it will literally be counted.
Don't forget the Baker School is open today, so if you live on or around campus, you can check to see if this is your polling location.
Whether you're heading to the Baker School or registered in Tennessee or have to travel to another state, figuring out how to vote can be tough if you've never done it before.
Our Maddie Romack joins us with some of the challenges students are facing. Maddie, what are students telling you about the process?
Well, guys, just like a lot of us throughout the Volunteer Channel, this is the first time voting for many UT students. I spoke with both an in-state and out-of-state student to hear about how their experiences have shaped their first time voting. For many UT students, this year's presidential election is their first time voting, and learning how to navigate the process can be a challenge.
So I feel like I've learned a lot more from doing my own research.
Carly Kaminsky, a UT in-state student, says she has spent time figuring out how to vote through her own efforts.
Like a lot of clubs and SGA and organizations like that on campus have done like tabling on PED and things like that to try to push out the information more.
While there have been efforts on campus to spread information about voting, some students still feel the university could do more.
The university as a whole could do more to help out first-time voters.
Figuring out how to vote can be hard, even for students registered in Tennessee. First-time voters need to know where to vote, what ID to bring, and what early voting is. For out-of-state students, the challenges can be even greater, as they must figure out how to cast their ballots from afar.
In-state students can vote at their county polling locations. Out-of-state students have to figure out other options, such as voting by mail.
A UT student from Illinois, Audrey Warda, hoped to vote by mail, but missed the deadline.
I didn't really have any information to how to know when the deadline was.
Now Audrey has to drive back home to Illinois to cast her vote.
It's not super easy to get home.
Despite the challenges, both in-state and out-of-state students say they are determined to make their votes count.
Each person's vote does make a difference, so I know it's a big priority to me to go and vote.
And whether you're from Tennessee or out of state, many students agree that voting isn't just a right, it's a responsibility.
I feel like it's really important for everyone that's able to vote, because it's our responsibility, as U.S. citizens, to vote.
As UT students get ready to vote, they're finding that overcoming challenges is worth it to make their voices heard. When you head to the polls, make sure you know what you need to do. Whether you're voting in person or from a distance, be aware of your options so your vote counts. And if you're still unsure where your voting location is here in Tennessee, you can find it in the Go Vote TN app.
Thanks, Maddie. For most of the election season, all eyes have been on the younger generation, wondering what big issues they are worried about, and we've been asking that same question.
A few weeks ago, I created a poll to see what the top issues are for students at UT.
There were 4 options, with the 2 sitting at top of the list being abortion and economy. Political experts like Katie Cahill say that it's important to vote for issues that you believe in.
Those who are elected know.
Knowing which issues matter to you is one of the most...
That next time, they may consider that your side might win.
Knowing which issues matter to you is one of the most important parts of voting, so we encourage everyone to do their research before heading to the polls.
Also, if you're a student at UT, that vote is still live for you to vote. The other options you can choose from are gun control and climate change. Chime in on our Instagram page at VolNewsTVC. Across the School of Journalism, all the media outlets have been working on covering this election, from a guide to the Daily Beacon to our NPR affiliate. We're joined now with Pierce Gentry, a reporter from WUOT and a first-time voter.
Pierce, thank you so much for joining us today. Kind of tell us, what are the stories that you've worked on so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I've been working on a lot of stories this election cycle. Primarily over the summer, I actually did a fellowship with News 21, which is an excellent news organization based out of Phoenix, Arizona, at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. And there we simply worked on covering the election officials all across the country, particularly in California, Wisconsin, Georgia, and some of the difficulties that they've been facing. It's been very hard on them, both in 2020 and this year in 2024, as people might face a lot of misinformation about elections in general and just how elections are run. And so election administrators across the country are seeing threats of violence against them, unfortunately, and it's been very hard on them. We've also been focusing on local issues here in Knoxville through my work with WUOT. We've been looking at local ballot referendums and local races to try and keep voters informed.
Yeah, and so the election's not the only thing you've been covering. You've been talking about Hurricane Helene as well. I know I was boots on the ground covering it. We had our Alexi Cowan also boots on the ground covering this. What was your experience with that?
Yeah, against all expectations, Hurricane Helene did hit North Carolina and East Tennessee, causing a lot of devastation. I mean, it completely took us aback. We were boots on the ground. The WOT's team was there in East Tennessee. I was actively there in Newport the day that the storm hit. And the sheer amount of devastation is unprecedented, and there are a lot of people hurting. And so we hope to keep covering this issue and being out there in the communities that have been impacted to tell these people's stories.
And how can viewers read your stories at WOT?
They can visit us at WUOT.org. They can also listen to us at 91.9 FM. Tonight we will begin live election coverage at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, you might need a jacket today. We're going to throw it over to our Chief Weather Specialist, Lauren Zaring.
Thanks, Grayson and Kyla. You know, weather can really influence voter turnout, so let's take a look at what we're working with today here in Knoxville. Weather's pretty perfect for Election Day, actually. Comfortable temperatures in the upper 60s right now. For those of us waiting out in the outdoor lines of the polls, it will heat up to the upper 70s towards the afternoon, so if you get warm easily, definitely bring a bottle of water to stay hydrated. Partly cloudy skies, some moments of sun. That should be what we're working with today. As we move through the day, weather should not hinder any voting plans, so we'll be all good. We'll take a look at what to expect for tonight later in the show. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Lauren.
Hey guys, Alexi Cowan here, and happy Election Day. We're here at Knox West High School, just about 5 minutes outside of UT campus, where the lines are already looking great. One thing I've noticed, a lot of young voters already here lining up. So stay tuned. We're going to go to some other locations around Knoxville. We'll see you there.
Being on City Council gave me the opportunity to be on the inside and make the decision myself.
We sat down with a man who fought to protect voting rights for everyone.
There were 40,558 votes cast. I won by 23.
Vol News reporter Alexi Cowan has a one-on-one with Knox County Mayor with a message that every vote does count.
Whether it's our stories, the warmth of our laugh, or our family's secret sauce, we all bring something different to the table. So make some space. The power of connection is waiting right outside your comfort zone. Learn how you can help strengthen your community at belongingbeginswithus.org/teamup.
We couldn't be in Knoxville without discussing the rich history of voting that took place just downtown.
Those familiar with downtown Knoxville's Market Square will recognize its statue of 3 women standing for their right to vote. These women were Lizzie Crozier French, Ann Dallas Dudley, and Elizabeth Avery Merriweather. Each born and raised in Tennessee, these women were activists for the women's suffrage movement, influencing state legislatures' vote for the 19th Amendment and making Tennessee's the final yes to put women's right to vote in the Constitution.
But that fight for the 19th Amendment isn't the only one fought in Knoxville.
Our Madison Sims got the chance to speak with civil rights activist, former politician, and the first African-American undergraduate to enroll at UT, Dr. Theodis Robertson Jr. Madison?
That's right, guys. I had the pleasure of sitting down with an extremely accomplished man.
What can I say? Life is good. Life is good.
After one conversation with Dr. Theodis Robinson Jr., one might say that this is an understatement for his life. The 82-year-old shared with me that he went skydiving for his 70th birthday. But after getting just a glimpse into his life's history, this fact proved to be just the tip of the iceberg for a man who has accomplished so much.
I was about to go to Knoxville College on a scholarship, but as a person who was participating daily in the lunch counter sit-ins and in the civil rights movement, this is another battle that has to be fought.
After graduating from Austin High School in the spring of 1960, Robinson planned to attend Knoxville College, a historically black college in East Knoxville. But more important to him than his scholarship, Robinson was active in the civil rights movement. And after discovering that African American undergraduates were being denied entry to the University of Tennessee, set out on a pursuit to make a change.
It's another barrier that we have to overcome. It's another piece of discrimination that's in place that has to be broken down.
That same summer, Robinson applied for admission to the university. And after being denied on the basis of race, he requested a meeting with then president of the university, Andrew Holt.
They looked at my transcript, they looked at my test scores, deemed that I did meet the qualifications to be admitted, so they changed the policy and I was admitted.
And in January of 1961, Robinson made history as one of 3 students to have been the first black undergraduates to attend the University of Tennessee. But this was only the beginning of his work as a catalyst for change. With a background in political science, he went on to become the first African American representative elected to the Knoxville City Council in over 50 years.
Being on City Council gave me the opportunity to be on the inside and make the decision myself and push much more. With much greater influence and much greater power to bring about change. So it really was simply an extension of my civil rights work.
For activists like Robinson, the decision to vote in this year's election is a no-brainer. But many people are on the fence, and some believe that their vote won't matter.
One vote does make a difference. Plus the fact that if you don't vote, somebody else will. And so they're casting the vote that you refuse to do.
And as he encouraged people to exercise their right to vote, Robinson reflected on his life's work.
It gives me a sense of fulfillment in my life, that there has been purpose in my living. And yet, I know that the work is not over.
Well, here on campus, Robinson was cemented in 2021 when the newest dorm buildings were renamed from orange and white to Robinson and Geyer, hoping to remind everyone of those who came before.
Thanks, Madison.
Here in the Media Center, our very own Land Grant Films partnered up with the Howard Baker School this election year to put together a documentary about the school's namesake, the former Senate Majority Leader who strived to reach across the aisle.
The goal of the film is to reintroduce people to the senator with an eye for photography and passion for working with others. Director of photography for the documentary, Seth Reynolds, says they held several interviews with people who knew Senator Baker to talk about the state of American democracy and the political polarization between parties.
Talking to people who he worked with and his family members and people who have studied him and are studying politics right now, kind of trying to see why we are so polarized. Right?
The documentary will be officially released in January, but if you want to keep up with the production, you can head to landgrantfilms.org.
The name Kane might sound familiar in the WWE ring, but here in Knox County, we know him better as Mayor Glenn Jacobs.
Our Alexi Cowan sat down with the former wrestler turned county mayor to talk about why voting really matters.
Please welcome our Knox County Mayor, Mr. Glenn Jacobs. Thank you so much for coming out here to be with us. It means a lot. Today is probably one of the biggest elections in history. And for a lot of our students, it's the first time we've ever voted. How do we know that our vote really makes a difference?
It does make a difference. And for me personally, I know that when I won my first election in 2018 in the Republican primary, there were 40,558 votes cast. I won by 23. So sometimes every vote does count. I'm proof of that.
How can students learn more about their election candidates to make an informed decision?
Well, you can go to their websites, obviously, and then for any information about the election itself here in Knox County, you can go to knoxcounty.org vote/election, and that'll take it to the Election Commission where you can see things like polling districts and the sample ballot and all that sort of things.
Can you tell us a little bit about what's on this ballot this year?
Yeah, so you'll have obviously the President of the United States as well as the United States Senator from Tennessee. You also have Congress people will be on the ballot. And then in many cases you'll have state representatives, state senators, and sometimes 2 local officials such as mayors and county commissioners and so forth.
Will you give us just a hint about your background for people that might not know in the athletic world?
Sure, yeah. So Halloween just passed, and Halloween for me was every day for many years. I got to put a costume and a mask on. So I was playing college football, hurt my knee, and fell into the world of professional wrestling and had about a 30-year career, and it was one of the most amazing things ever.
Have you seen any similarities from, working in that field and the political field?
The business kind of political environment of WWE, there was a political environment, and there isn't anything that people do. So one of the most important skills I think that young people can develop is just those interpersonal relationship skills and how to persuade people and, just how to treat people. And for me, that was actually the most important thing. Yes, it's not the things in the ring of folks getting slammed and all that, but it's actually being able to be successful in that career, which again, you have to have a bit of a political component to do that.
Last question, if you could give advice to any of these UT students out here, big election, like this is a very defining moment in their future, what would you tell them?
Yeah, just do your research. It's important to vote. It's also important to be an informed voter. So I would just encourage everybody to do as much research as they possibly can and then do whatever their conscience tells them to.
Being engaged in voting means that your voice is heard.
Changing the trend, the push to get younger voters out to the polls.
Starting to feel like the other party is kind of the enemy.
The push to bridge the political divide.
Be right there. Wait. Use the shovel and bucket of water, remember? Drown, stir, drown, feel. Then make sure it's cool.
Where'd you learn that?
SmokeyBear.com. Brushed up on some tips before we left. Don't want to start a wildfire, right?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
We are the Tennessee Volunteers. People who create connections, push boundaries, do the research that changes lives. We've got world-class academics and championship athletics. To be the best, you gotta learn from the best. And if you wanna lead, you gotta light the way. We've got what it takes. It takes a volunteer.
Tennessee is often one of the lowest ranked states when it comes to voter registration. In the 2022 midterm election, we ranked 42nd.
Sydney Brackett joins us now to tell us a little bit about that number. Sydney, that seems a little low.
It is low. Not only was Tennessee ranked 42nd in voter registration, but 51st in voter turnout, according to a recent study done by Think Tennessee. I spoke with a group on campus that is encouraging students to vote to help change these numbers.
Some students are feeling stressed about the voting process. One group on campus can help with that. Vols Vote. Member Elijah Winningham explained what they are.
Vols Vote is an initiative to get students civically engaged on campus.
College students are consistently ranked near the bottom of voter registration and turnout. Vols Vote member Sophie Mylan believes there is an answer as to why.
We often don't, again, have the foresight or the preparation to make a voting plan.
Vols Vote aims to fix this issue by providing the resources and information to help students feel more comfortable registering and casting their vote.
Being engaged in voting means that your voice is heard.
Throughout this election process, let's continue to put that Vol spirit into voting. To learn more about Vols Vote and how you can get involved, visit volsvote.utk.edu.
Thanks, Sydney. Polarization is a major factor in elections, especially in the 2024 presidential race growing closer. It might seem like people are either far right or far left with no space for agreement.
I spoke with Associate Director of the Institute of American Civics about the polarization and the effect it has on American democracy.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
Political polarization occurs when the Democratic and Republican parties oppose issues.
Because he is really a sicko.
Right? Starting to feel like the other party is kind of the enemy, not just a political opponent.
Dr. Bush, the Associate Director of the Institute of American Civics, has seen the political polarization increase over the years.
Years is more kind of extreme forms of it, where voters are thinking not just really well of their party, but increasingly badly of the opposing party.
Something first-time voter Matthew Hyde has watched grow between the parties.
The extreme ideas that we have on both sides, like they've both been pushed kind of their furthest.
These political disbeliefs are fueled by social media users consuming election-based content.
Social media has played a part. It tends to be not an area where there's a lot of nuanced conversation going on.
He says it's on voters to break the conversation, focused on putting the two against one another.
They can break themselves out of that mold partly by seeking out a variety of views when they're gathering information.
If this mold does not change, American democracy will be impacted.
Either we learn how to deal with that in a constructive way and how to tolerate that in a constructive way, or we aren't going to be able to keep the system that we have.
Hello everyone, right now we're outside of the Eternal Life Harvest Center located just outside of downtown Knoxville. Now, it's a little quieter on this side. There's not a line behind me like there was at earlier locations today. But remember, you have until 8 p.m. tonight to cast your vote. As long as you are in line at 8 p.m., you can still cast your vote.
I was shocked. It was really cool just to see something I made just up somewhere where everybody can see it.
A class at UT is putting their skills to work this election season.
We just try to accommodate them any way that we can.
We take a look at how different polling locations are helping everyone cast their ballot.
Whether it's our stories, the warmth of our laugh, or our family's secret sauce, we all bring something different to the table. So make some space. The power of connection is waiting right outside your comfort zone. Learn how you can help strengthen your community at belongingbeginswithus.org/teamup.
Right there. Wait. Use the shovel and bucket of water, remember? Drown, stir, drown, feel. Then make sure it's cool.
Where'd you learn that?
SmokeyBear.com. Brushed up on some tips before we left. Don't want to start a wildfire, right?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
We are the Tennessee Volunteers. People who create connections, push boundaries, do the research that changes lives. We've got world-class academics and championship athletics. To be the best, you gotta learn from the best. And if you wanna lead, you gotta light the way. We've got what it takes. It takes a volunteer.
Lasted for about 6 hours when the deputies surrendered the jail.
A look at how an East Tennessee city took a stand in voter security.
And then persistence was how I got the interview.
A connection all the way to the top with one UT professor.
What people really need to understand, some of the laws that affect you the most are the laws that get made locally.
We sat down with one of Tennessee's candidates for Senate, Gloria Johnson.
Around the state and across the country, polling lines are filling up. We bring the information you need to make an informed decision this voting cycle. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kyla Berry.
And I'm Grayson Thatcher. From UT's Connections to Elections to a live interview with Knoxville Mayor India Kincannon, we're covering why your vote matters.
Now, if you're heading to the polls today, it might be the first time, but even if it's not, here's a reminder on what you need to know.
In Knox County, the polls will close at 8, so as long as you are in line by 8 p.m., you should be good to go. Now, you'll need to bring a valid state ID or a federal ID that can be your driver's license or your passport. For your vote to count, you have to vote in the county where you are registered to vote. To find this and more information on your polling location, you can check the GoVote TN app to see what location is for you.
And even if you know what to bring and where to go, voting for the first time can be very intimidating. But the experts want you to know it's easier than you think. Be sure to bring your federal or state ID and be prepared to fill out your ballot. After you sign in, you'll be handed a ballot, fill it out, and take it to the scanner to cast your vote. The Administrator of Elections for McMinn County, Tina McKinney, gives us a sneak peek on what to expect.
Those are ballot marking devices. They only mark your paper. They don't record any information. When you get done with that, you print it, you hold it in your hand, you look at it, make sure everybody you wanted to vote for is on there, and if it's correct, then you take it to the scanner, and the scanner is where you cast your ballot.
Once again, you can visit the GoVote TN app to see where you can vote on Election Day. For a handful of students taking media and graphics course this election, they've created a hands-on experience to remember.
What has the School of Journalism been working on this election season, Alexa?
That's right, guys. A lot has been happening here on campus in the classrooms. For weeks now, students have had a big opportunity to encourage Tennesseans to vote with initiatives from the Baker School for Public Policy and Public Affairs. It's called the Election Project.
When a college professor sees a good thing happening in the classroom, they know to keep it going. That's what longtime journalism professor Robert Heller lives by each school year.
Even though it's a different group of students, I can do these same projects and they get better and better and better each year, and it's very exciting when that happens.
The longest teaching professor at UT's College of Communication and Information knows what he has in store for his class.
I've taught it pretty much the same way since I got here in 1986.
This year, Heller wanted his students' projects to make an impact this election season, designing voting messages with a boost from a major company.
Our advertising has been so wonderful for us over the course of all these years.
What started as just an idea has now come to life.
Students were excited to see their work go from paper to the billboards.
I was shocked. It was really cool just to see something I made just up somewhere where everybody can see it.
Sophomore journalism major John Young wanted to spread a moving message to his community.
I think most people don't think their vote matters, and I think having it everywhere in all these little clever ways that everybody's done it, I think is impactful.
The students' hard work are shown on billboards in over 5 Tennessee locations, all the way from Newport to Cleveland.
I had as much joy as my students did when I went to see these billboards and to see that those are my students and that's their work and it's up on this enormous billboard.
Making a difference for the election, one billboard at a time.
People who view those things are going to notice it and remember it, and hopefully that makes a difference.
Make your mark, make your vote. To learn more about what went into the creative process of designing these voting messages and to see the students' work, head to cci.utk.edu. And of course, with registration coming up, if you want to check out the class, search for Media Graphics 380 if you want to take Professor Heller's class to see what could be in store for you.
Thanks, Alexa. One of the biggest questions every 4 years around the start of November is, what's the Electoral College? Well, Alexis Brunson breaks down what it is and how it works.
Our electoral system can be confusing to some people, so I spoke to political science assistant professor Troy Goodell to break down just exactly how it works.
When we go to vote, and I've showed the sample ballot, Knox County sample ballot to my classes, to my students,
You're actually, it says you're voting for the electors for Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance, or the electors for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And then they go and cast the formal votes. And the way it's worked is constitutionally, you count it up by states. Each state has a certain number of electoral votes. It's based on how many congressional districts you have, plus 2, because every state has 2 senators. So in Tennessee, I believe we have 11 electoral votes. So it varies by state. It's nothing in the Constitution that says if you win the popular vote in your state, you get all the electoral votes, but that's the way 48 states do it.
Goodell also says that the prevalence of this winner-take-all system is part of the reason that all of the focus is on swing states as we approach the election.
With many UT students voting for the first time, things can get overwhelming, but the Baker School for Public Policy has tried to make it easy.
Our Lily Van Alsbury joins us now. Lily?
Thanks, guys. Throughout the semester, the Baker School has done its best to make sure voters are confident going into the booth. I spoke to students about how their events have held. Students at the University of Tennessee are eager to make their voices heard.
I'm a first-time voter, so I'm really excited about that.
Senior Mary Andreas is a student at the Howard Baker School, ready to vote.
The Baker School does a really good job opening up a lot of events and ways for you to be involved and kind of bounce ideas off of peers as well, aside from the media and networks and leaned statistics.
The college hosts events to educate students. Their focus on policy and law in this election.
I think that having those events and being around people that are also vocal about their points of views and have done a lot of research themselves will put my ideas in perspective and even connect puzzle pieces and make my voting decision a little bit more clear.
Director of External Events at the Baker School, Courtney Thompson-Hernandez, describes how these events prepare the students.
We want everyone to be educated, and we always want to have a place where people feel safe and they can come and have conversations and ask questions and feel very informed.
The school wrapped their election series this week with keynote speakers talking about freedom of speech, the current economy, and candidate policies.
We really just want to make sure that students always have the feeling that they can come here, feel comfortable, ask questions. We are nonpartisan, so we really believe in stating just the facts, and so we are really proud to have that and be leading this for the university.
Hernandez relates to current students through her own experience and wants to create change for first-time voters today.
And there wasn't really any resources. You know, you had the news that you watched, but at the time there wasn't a whole lot. So what we've been able to really do is partner with our student orgs, SGA, and really help get the message out. We've done watch parties for the presidential debate and the vice presidential debate.
With the resources here at the Howard Baker School, students are more informed to vote.
After going to the events of the Baker School and keeping up to date, I feel very informed and very ready to vote. I'm excited and I feel confident.
Ready for Election Day? Ready to make their decision. If you're curious about the Baker School, you can check out their events at baker.utk.edu. They'll be holding more events in the spring.
Thanks, Lily. And now we get to welcome our special guest, Mayor Kincannon. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's Election Day. Why is it so important to vote?
Well, it's so important to vote. It's a milestone. You get your driver's license at 16, you turn 18. I encourage everybody to register the moment they turn 18, but after registering, you got to exercise your right to vote. I'm wearing white today because when my grandmother was born in 1902, she and any women in our country had no right to vote, and so I don't take that privilege lightly, and I vote every time I can, and I encourage UT students to do the same.
And so a really big reason we're here today is because for a lot of students on campus, this is their first presidential election that they get to take place in. I mean, kind of tell me, why is it so important for these students to be getting out and voting right now?
Well, voting is how we elect our leaders, and leaders make a difference. And I think that this is a very important election, and no matter the outcome, it's important to exercise your right to vote. If your candidate is more likely to win if you actually vote for him or her. I'm, again, really excited about all the people on the ballot. I want to encourage everybody to not just vote every 4 years, but as a city mayor, we're on the ballot only in odd years. And when we think about the issues related to housing and sidewalks and safety, the president has nothing to do with that. And so I encourage everyone to vote this year for president, but then also vote in your local and county and state elections as well, because those affect your quality of life in a really big way.
Each election, it brings so many people to the polls. What is a down ballot, and what does that matter?
Well, the president's at the top of the ticket, as are other federal offices, and then you have state offices, and then in the summer primaries, you have county and municipal things. At the bottom, if you're registered in the city of Knoxville, there's a charter amendment proposed. You have to turn the paper over and then read it and vote. And I'll just let you know, I voted yes on both of them. So you might study those issues and consider voting yes as well. But those things, the charter amendment affects how voting is done in the city of Knoxville. I also want to put a plug in for students here. You live here in this city for 4 years, sometimes more if you're going on to grad school, and the quality of life here is really important to your life as a student. So if you want, vote in wherever you're from. But if you're going to live here for 4 years, I encourage you to register here and make your voice heard. Elected officials will pay even more attention to your needs if they know that you're registered to vote.
That's great. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and toss it over to our chief weather specialist, Lauren Zaring. Lauren, what can we expect when we're heading to the polls today?
Thanks, guys. Let's see what this afternoon and evening has in store for us. Temperatures should top out today at around 78 degrees at 3 p.m., then gradually decrease. For those of us heading to the polls later this evening, expect those temperatures to drop to the upper 60s again around 7 p.m. A few more clouds may join us this afternoon and into the evening, but it shouldn't be an issue. That is all the weather I have for you today. Wishing everyone a very happy election day. Let's get back to the desk.
Thanks, Lauren.
Here at Sequoia Elementary School, where we couldn't even find a parking spot, we kind of had to make our own. But as you can see behind me, we even have tents set up here. Some candidates coming out to mingle with their community members and chat with them. So as you can see, beautiful day to get out and do your part.
It was a really enjoyable process overall, I would say.
We sat down with the journalism professor with an election special.
What we know for a fact is we get the best government when the most people vote.
We sat down with Representative Gloria Johnson to break down one of the biggest races in Tennessee.
Whether it's our stories, the warmth of our laugh, or our family's secret sauce, we all bring something different to the table. So make some space. The power of connection is waiting right outside your comfort zone. Learn how you can help strengthen your community at belongingbeginswithus.org/teamup.
Be right there. Wait. Use the shovel and bucket of water, remember? Drown, stir, drown, feel. Then make sure it's cool.
Where'd you learn that?
SmokeyBear.com. Brushed up on some tips before we left. Don't want to start a wildfire, right?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back. In Tennessee, the biggest race you'll see besides the presidential race is that between Marsha Blackburn and Gloria Johnson for the state Senate seat.
Our executive producer, Gray McNichol, sat down with Johnson about the race and the importance of voting.
First off, just thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
We're happy to have you. AJ, could you tell me a little bit kind of like what your jumping off point for like getting into office?
Well, you know, that started much later. I'm not one of those people that was into politics my entire life. After 2 terms of George Bush and things that I was seeing that I was concerned about, I got involved with the Barack Obama election and really was trained by their best organizers at how to organize for the issues that you care about and for candidates.
For a lot of people, it's their first presidential election at the very least, and if they are like voting for president, it's their first time probably voting for Senate. So what advice would you give to young voters who are maybe a little bit confused and concerned about sort of what's going on the local level?
Well, I would think, it's the presidential election is always sexy and more people get involved because it's a presidential election. But what people really need to understand, some of the laws that affect you the most are the laws that get made locally, in your city, in your county, in your state legislature. Even at the local level, you've got to elect people that share your values.
Well, just one last question for you. I like asking everyone because I'm always interested. If there were anything you would tell your younger self, what would that be?
Well, I do often wish that I had gotten more involved politically earlier. When you learn and have those skills to organize, and not just for politics, but just issues you care about. For me, it was healthcare and education, because what we know for a fact is we get the best government when the most people vote.
Now, we did reach out to Marsha Blackburn for a sit-down interview, but sadly we weren't able to connect with the senator.
If you're curious about Blackburn's stances, we encourage you to check out her campaign's website.
It's important to talk about the biggest issues that sway voters. A poll conducted by the Pew Research Center says that one of the top issues this election is the economy.
I conducted a poll across UT students, and their answers were very similar.
It's not surprising to hear that those two issues have been expressed as significant concerns for UT students.
For first-time voter Preston Reeker, the economy is at the top of his concerns.
One of the issues for me, I'll go with everyone else, is economy. I feel like that's very important.
Ava Pizzarusso is feeling the effects.
Inflation is just so high, especially living in New York. Prices are up. I transferred here, I went to school in DC also. Prices are up there.
Something Dunn says will affect first-time voters the most.
They're going to be entering the workforce even sooner, and so these concerns about the economy are going to be even more pressing for them.
Causing a challenge after post-grad.
Have someone with a good, well-paying job, but still not be able to afford to buy a first house.
And he says most voters are retrospective.
It means they tend to reward or punish the party in power based on the past economic performance.
That division in American democracy is apparent to Reeker.
You're either A or you're B, and there's no in between, and people are looking at you differently for it.
Dunn says this division needs to come together for democracy.
Recognizing that perhaps some of our disagreements, even if we still disagree, are ones that we can live with each other.
You can let your opinion be heard by heading to our Instagram page at Vol News TVC, where you can also keep up with everything going on behind the scenes.
Former President Jimmy Carter served one term as president in the late 1970s, and he is the oldest still living former president at 100 years old.
Alexis, can you tell us more?
Of course. Dr. Amber Rosner was working on a book covering former President Carter's campaign trail when she met him. And part of the process, which includes sorting through tons of archival information, was interviewing both journalists of the era and those connected to his campaign, including former President Carter himself.
When I was young, so about 8, 9, I would hear the name Jimmy Carter, but I wouldn't always hear anything positive associated with his name.
Dr. Amber Rosner found herself fascinated by former President Carter at a young age. And now she can say that she's written a book about him.
So I often joke that I spent more time studying and writing about the campaign of former President Carter than he spent on the campaign trail himself.
Work that took a lot of effort.
I was on the leaderboard in the Carter Library for a time in terms of number of boxes that I had looked in. So like 500 boxes of material.
From sorting through archives to looking through a decade of news sources and interviewing about 25 people. And yet, one of the hardest parts for Dr. Rosner was getting the interview with the man himself.
And then persistence was how I got the interview.
Continuing to ask and use connections despite the rejections.
And then I sent him a copy of my first book, which was about baseball. And Jimmy Carter is a huge baseball fan. And I wrote an inscription in the book and said, like, please give this kid from Winder a chance. And sure enough, I got the interview.
An effort that Dr. Rosner says paid off in the end.
It was a really enjoyable process overall, I would say.
And taught her so much more about former President Carter and his view on that era in his life. Now Dr. Rosner is working towards a second book on former President Carter. This one focused more on his presidency and the legacy that it left. And this time around, it's a little bit easier for Dr. Rosner as she already has a lot of material to work with as she gets back into the groove of things.
Thanks, Alexis.
It seemed as if the whole world had suddenly exploded.
Jean Wilson was just 9 years old in the 1940s, but remembers her fear 70 years later.
GIs came around our house, and before long there were some shots, some gunshots that came from the jail, which was across the street from my house.
Jean Wilson lived across the street from the jailhouse in Athens with her mother and 3 siblings as bullets started coming through her kitchen window.
Because of the shots that were being fired, my family was very scared.
Civilians stepped in, protecting the family, while recently returned World War II veterans used their kitchen window to fire at the jailhouse below.
Well, I do know that they were shooting across the street over into the jail.
The Battle of Athens was a result of decades of election fraud, police brutality, and voter intimidation from former Sheriff Paul Cantrell. The veterans formed a ticket against the Cantrell machine.
And the Cantrell machine knew they were probably going to get beat unless they brought in some extra muscle. There were people trying to vote who were beat up. One man got a concussion. Another man was shot in the back for trying to vote. Another guy had to jump out of a window to keep from getting shot.
4 o'clock that day, voting precincts closed and ballot boxes were held within the jailhouse where the deputies and sheriff counted the votes.
They said, get the ballot boxes back, and then the guys in the jail said no, and then someone fired first, and that's when the battle actually began.
The firefight between the GIs and the deputies had an explosive ending after GIs set off dynamite. The deputies then surrendered the ballot box. The votes were counted, and the GI ticket had won by a landslide.
It lasted for about 6 hours when the deputies surrendered the jail.
The lessons learned from the Battle of Athens are still in effect today. Following the battle, policies in the state of Tennessee went into place to prevent future cases of voter fraud.
I'm grateful that good came out of it.
In Athens, Tennessee, Bella Fricks, Vol News.
Hello everybody, Zach Belfry here outside of Pond Gap Elementary School, and as you can see, the line behind me has died down for now, but it was out the door just a few moments ago. Now we are expecting a huge turnout today, as 2.2 million Tennesseans have already casted their early vote, and there's more on the way. We're looking for a historic turnout this election.
I definitely try and not look at it too much so I don't get distracted from what my main focus is.
Tennessee is home to a number of international athletes. What do they think about the election?
Be right there. Wait. Use the shovel and bucket of water, remember? Drown, stir, drown, feel. Then make sure it's cool.
Where'd you learn that?
SmokeyBear.com. Brushed up on some tips before we left. Don't want to start a wildfire, right?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
We are the Tennessee Volunteers. People who create connections, push boundaries, do the research that changes lives. We've got world-class academics and championship athletics. To be the best, you gotta learn from the best. And if you wanna lead, you gotta light the way. We've got what it takes. It takes a volunteer.
Election season is a big deal for many Americans, but UT's international student athletes have a different take on the matter.
Griffin, what's going on in the minds of these student athletes?
For many international students, election season in the United States is a unique challenge. Most are simply trying to survive the election and stay focused on why they are really here. Student athletes come to the United States for opportunities that they might be unable to find in their home country.
Over in the United States, there was a lot more options for me to enhance my swimming and academic career.
Freshman swimmer Kobe Upton, originally from Australia, hasn't paid too much attention to the noise surrounding the 2024 election, prioritizing what he came here to do, study and swim.
Definitely been a lot of hype. I try and ignore it as much as I can because obviously I don't have much of an opinion. But yeah, I definitely try and not look at it too much so I don't get distracted from what my main focus is.
UT's international student athletes come from all over the globe, but now they end up here in the United States in the midst of a presidential election. Senior Lauren Weatherall, originally from the United Kingdom, has a different perspective, as the election results could determine how long she stays in the U.S.
Yeah, so for me, I know that there's some different immigration laws that are coming into play depending on who gets in.
Upton explains how not voting in Australia could cost you financially.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started the process here in America turning 18, obviously, where that's the legal age to vote. So I obviously had to withdraw from my voting coming to here, otherwise I would be fined for not voting. Whereas here in America, obviously, voting is optional.
Although neither athlete can cast a ballot in the States, they are fully immersed in their education and swimming with the 2024 election approaching fast. While they can't cast a ballot, these athletes understand the importance of this election to their American peers and their own status in the U.S. And while they may not be able to make their voices heard here, our international students urge others to take advantage of the opportunity they have and vote.
Thanks, Griffin.
During this election, it's important that everyone gets the opportunity to vote. Whether you're in a wheelchair or voting with grandparents, accessibility might be a question for you.
Our Bella Fricks and Gabe Knight spoke to poll workers in Loudoun County about what resources are available for you.
Miss Armin is one of many senior voters exercising their right to vote in the 2024 presidential election. However, many senior citizens find themselves having a hard time going to the polls due to mobility issues.
And I've had them where they were helped me cross the street because of the traffic being so heavy around the polling areas that they would help me across the street, and maybe I stand with an umbrella over me if I'm in the sun.
Local voting institutions are also doing everything they can to accommodate the elder population when they arrive at the polls to vote.
We have machines that are lower, that actually tilt down, that if you're sitting in a chair, that they're easier to read, they're easier to operate. We make sure that when they exit, they go back out this way because there's only one step, whereas this way they got 3 steps they have to maneuver. And we just try to accommodate them any way that we can.
Voting institutions like this one hope to be able to give as much convenience to the elderly population as they come to the polls from now all the way to the end of November 5th. This is Bella Fricks and Gabe Knight reporting.
Well, there's no need to run to the polls today. Knoxville Area Transit is doing their part to ensure everyone casts their ballot to vote by providing free rides to different polling locations.
All CAT rides, including CAT's Lyft service, will be free all day tomorrow with the goal to make voting as easy as possible for all of Knoxville. You can find more information about these free rides on the CAT website or the Transit app.
Again, that is today that they're offering those free rides. Now we're going to toss it over to weather one more time for those of you heading to the ballot or you're standing in line trying to see what you got to wait in. So, Lauren, what's up?
Let's recap our weather real quick. You can see behind me there is not a cloud in the sky. This is a perfect election day. It is shaping out to be just beautiful weather for us. If you're standing outside in lines at the polls, remember it's a little bit hot today. It will get up to around 80 degrees around 4 p.m. It's a little hot. Definitely bring a bottle of water. Stay hydrated. Be safe, of course. It will sink down again to the upper 60s around 6 p.m. So expect those more comfortable temperatures. Maybe even vote later on if you want those comfortable temperatures in line. Thanks so much. Let's throw it back to the desk. Happy Election Day.
Thank you, Lauren. That's all the time we have for you today, guys. We want to thank you for joining us for our first ever live show. I'm Kyla Berry.
And I'm Grayson Thatcher. Remember to get in line to vote before 8 p.m. so that your voice is heard. Have a great night and go Vols.